housing, I just reviewed our strategy for housing provision over the next 30 years with the consultant working on it. So population growth, population structure, population distribution are very critical. We have a fairly good idea of what they're going to be between now and 2057. And that is meant to be this. Of course, the UN itself has a much longer time horizon. The UN projects our population levels all the way to 2,100, by which time I'm sure everyone in this room will be gone. But 2057, I would feel some people will be here. Ultimately, this consulting will depend largely on containing both inflation and currency instability over long periods of time, investing in critical sectors of the economy, moving from an import-dependent economy to an export-driven one, and providing ample opportunities for employment and decent work to ensure a virtuous cycle of rising incomes and growing demand for goods and services in a sustainable manner of course. So that ultimately we need to have this self-propelling mechanism for growth. One of the noble issues of the SDGs is afterwards to also look at food, not just post-harvest losses, but also food losses, food waste. That's something we hadn't considered previously, but now is going to be part of our national development strategy. In addition to sustainable ways of production and consumption. A recent consulting defense, this is what we found. Recently, we remember the CEOs were crazy, but there was a deliberate effort to actually slap it down and stabilize it. We have our own forecast, but if this continues this way, they will believe that even these targets will be exceeded. The 45 billion to 3.6 trillion will easily be exceeded because one thing that has always brought us back is a weak national currency. The number of graphs that we have where you see per capita income in city terms declining, but in dollar terms it begins to decline, partly because of the depreciation of the city. So we are very hopeful that if we follow these things, invest in critical infrastructure as well as policies to jumpstart industry, we should be able to do this. The role of infrastructure is very critical because we don't want a situation where you invest in infrastructure before you think of your economy. You need to look at where the economy is going to go and then you need the necessary infrastructure investments. Of course, human development is very critical. We have only about 50%, and this is what the youth employment issue is very critical. Only 50% of the youth actually have high school education. The rest, about 77% of them have BEC or less. So these are some of the issues that we have, and it comes from clearly what we need to do with the SDGs. We believe that if we do all these things, we more than exceed the goals specified in the SDGs and of course achieve our national development objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thompson. I am at this point going to invite a response from civil society, commentary, and producers, users, and partners in this whole enterprise. George, I would really like you to come up with it. I would like you to come, because when you finish, I want you to come up with it so that you fill up there. Right, okay. You want to go up there.
Thank you very much, Jester, and thank you very much, Dr. Thompson. I'll first of all start with the approach that adopted, which is alignment, adoption, and adaptation. I think, well, I wasn't there, but I can assume that we do so with the intention of making sure that we live up to our commitment as members of AU. So that is common level. But it doesn't answer the question of prioritization. I wish that as a country we have all the resources to implement everything that they ought to be implemented so that we could achieve the targets that we have set for ourselves. But history is there to guide us. In some calculation, we required some $6 billion to implement MDGs. Eventually, we came to $2 billion. That amount we could still not raise that to implement the MDGs. Bear in mind, these were the minimum goals that we were aspiring to. So, if we are adopting a strategy that is taking everything on board, and of course, I am not disputing that all the 17 goals are more important. At this critical stage of our nation's development, all the goals are very important, but we need to prioritize, given that we simply do not have the resources. And so, the fact that we are going to work on a new medium-term development plan presents us an opportunity to look at within the 17 goals, which of these do we want to achieve in the medium term, so that we are able to realistically finance all of this. I know. Okay. So I was saying that we need to look at our capacity to finance the goals. Then that question then comes to what is urgent so far as prioritization and localization are concerned. I mean, from where we sit as civil society, we think that we have to also be a bit careful in terms of how we localize, or if we like, domesticate the SDGs. The tension for central government to always determine this and have it imposed on local governments, even though we do have a decentralized framework that has been going on for some time, is quite worrying. And so it will be very interesting for us to be clear on the extent to which we will anchor the implementation of the SDGs on our decentralization framework, so that local government take the foremost responsibility in terms of implementing the goals. And that comes back to the question of the role they need to also decentralize the Ghana Statistical Service. We all know that statistical averages always hide the reality. Of course, we in the civil society are prepared to complement this by providing alternative data, not alternative facts, but alternative data sources that will help us give some meaning to quantitative data. But it is very important for us to begin to make the local government utilize data that will be collected in their own locality. Oftentimes, they do not even have access to localized data in a way that will help them to determine. And that is also problematic because certain frameworks or guidelines are sometimes imposed, even though it is good, by the NDPC. But the question is, do we want to impose a standard or a context-specific framework that will guide the development of medium-term plans? It's a question that I do not have an answer to. But I think that we need to look at what is context-specific so that the local government can respond to the realities and needs as well as the aspirations of citizens. Then it comes back to the question of policy coherence and coordination. I think it is good that we talk about coordination, but my few years of experience in this field has told me that we often talk about coordination, collaboration when we sit in the room to meet. Without, we do not go beyond the room talk to make sure that institutions are talking and working on the field among themselves. It is very important that we get state institutions to work together, and I think here again the local governments provide a good opportunity, especially now that we are using composite budgeting framework as a way of financing development at the community level. So, not just we are going to the part of the report we would think that we will still, our option of providing shadow report is a very good way of providing independent assessment of progress that we will be making, especially from the perspective of citizens and from the perspective of civil society. Earlier in the day, I had talked about the need to use scientific, non-conventional data gathering methodologies, and it is important or it is good for us to begin to incorporate some of these approaches that will help us to get stories that often are hidden by quantitative data. Then I would also want us to think about developing an inclusive and open implementation strategy. To what extent do we take the issue of transparency and accountability serious in this regard? Especially so since we will have to largely depend on our domestic revenue to implement this. Oftentimes we have talked about corruption, we have talked about lack of information, and so on and so forth. I think that a paradigm, an opportunity has presented itself for a paradigm shift in terms of how we push the frontiers of transparency and accountability with an inclusive development strategy, so that citizens citizens are at the center stage of every effort that we make. Now, you mentioned the fact that there are some orientations that are done. It is probably not enough, because this is only supply-sided and supply-driven. To what extent are we going to get citizens to have SDG data management as a household technologies that they will be using? When we were growing up, we were hearing a lot more about Vision 2020. Of course, at that young age, we didn't know what that was about. But it was so publicized, and citizens were so sensitized on it that it was not a supply-oriented initiative. It became a household name that those of us who didn't understand what they were talking about aspired to understand what it meant. And I think that we can employ a similar strategy to create a greater public awareness of the SDG, so that demand-side accountability and ownership mechanisms can be developed and nurtured, so as to ensure that all hands are on deck and no one is left behind. Thank you very much.
Getting very, very, very exciting, and I don't want to try to sum up anything. But George kept making reference to the local level, the capacities of assemblies, and so on. So I'm going to invite 2 comments on this and then open the free for all. The first set of comments are going to come from Mr. Frank Asante from the local government service secretariat. The second set of comments are going to come from Ms. Dorothy Oni, Director, Research and Statistics, Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Dorothy, please wave me. I can't see you. Dorothy? Okay, there she is. Great. Okay, Frank, proceed. Comments.
Thank you, Matthias. As you said, Office of the Head of Local Government Service is implementing one aspect of the country's decentralization policy, and that is the administrative aspect. So, administratively, the Office of the Local Government Service has instructed the LMPs to include the SDGs into their period of So basically, that is what we are doing, because the action is at the local level. They have to work with the local people. So therefore, we have to do know this with the local people. And for us to know the effect of this, the Office of the Head of Local Government Service has also signed a memorandum of understanding with the University of Ghana Business School to assemble these assemblies on the FDs so as to enable the Office of the Head of Local Government Service to know the performances of these LOPs. So this is what I would add.
Right. What about statistical capacity, building statistical capacity at the local level?
Yes, for the meantime, the last year, the Office of the Head of Local Government Service and then Ghana Statistical Service came together, and then let me say this: we don't have enough statisticians at the local level, and therefore when the two institutions came together, we were able to integrate about 85 of the officers of the Ghana Statistical Service at the district level. So look, that is what we'll be able to do, and we hope with time we will increase the number.
Dorothy, production and utilization of data in local government policy making. What's the position of the ministry on that?
Thank you, Angela. This is very, very critical for the ministry. Also, when the ministry, in our priority areas currently, we have amongst them focus on formulation of policies on local government and decentralization, which includes rural and urban development. As we know, the SDGs really focus on the urbanization and also rural settings. And these have all been incorporated already in our sector and medium-term development plans and our monitoring and evaluation plans for them. So the SDGs have been incorporated into these plans. And we all know that to develop policies which will be really implementable and have the effect that we desire to have, we need to have accurate, reliable data with the statistics that will enable us to plan and also come out with policies that will address those issues that we need to address with regard to urbanization and rural development. So we have sensitized the assemblies to that effect, that we are also very particular about data. More so when decentralization is being emphasized, and they are great health, Ghana Statistical Service, education. They are now supposed to be in the district assembly, so they are now fully decentralized. So we expect data coming from the district level to be complete, to have all the current data statistics about the development in the areas of education, in the area of health, and all others, as well as inclusiveness in the way that gender issues should also be mainstreamed and captured again. So any report coming up from the district level should have that complete history to tell and story to tell about development in all these areas, and we should be really inclusive. So that's what we are educating them on. And also, the Ghana Statistical Service is very critical here as a decentralized department in the assemblies. And therefore, as a ministry, we will also make sure, see to it that the local government service, whose mandate is for capacity building and the human resource management, the assemblies, are really focused on making sure we get the Ghana Statistics Service officers in the assemblies to be able to capture all the data for us. So we regard it to be very, very, very important. And we are really pushing for that. It's a priority for us.
Great. Thank you very much. Now I have my free for all. I'm going to recognize 3 at a time and then we go. You are number 1. Good. Who's number 2? Who's going to be number 2? Don't be shy. Number 2, yes. Yes, and Eric, you are number 3. Okay, number 1, proceed.
moderator. I want to contribute to the efforts that are being made to build capacity at the enterprise. We are currently implementing the National Strategy for the Development of Statistics, which we have christened Ghana Statistics Development Project. And in that project, in 2013 and 2014, we trained 2 officers from each of the 216 districts with support of the World Bank and Danida and SIDA. And we gave them training in analysis of data, and then we asked them to prepare their district reports, analytical reports on using census data. So we believe that with these initial beginnings, they can also take the process forward. Again, in order that you will be able to use the data, we assisted them to actually prepare and disseminate the data at the local level. So each district actually disseminated its own plan with support of DSS officers. Apart from that, we are also building the capacity of officers at the research statistics and information management directories of the MPs in various fields. But in the long run, what we have recommended during the review of the Ghana Statistics Law to incorporate stakeholders in the national statistical system is that at the MDAs, at least they should employ officers with backgrounds in statistics and mathematics. At the moment, we have qualified officers who are manning, we have officers who are manning the MDAs, but few of them have qualifications in statistics. So we've recommended in the bill which is currently before Parliament that at least all the research department or statistics department of the MPs will have first degree in statistics. Again, during the institutional reform that we also undertook, Ghana Statistical Service is no more operating offices in the districts. We are ending at the regional level, and we are building capacity of the regional offices to be able to give backstop services to the MMDs. Again, we're also working with the Office of the Head of Civil Service to also build capacity at the MMD. But you know, capacity building is a bit costly. So, going forward, we will agree with all the MDAs to have a component in their budget for capacity building. And in that way, whatever we get from our national office, we will be able to support them, build capacity at the local level as well as the MDA level, so that we will be able to move the process forward.
Thank you so much for that submission. But please tell us who you are, and so that we have a sense of where you are coming from.
I'm Jeffrey Sylvester, one of the directors of the Ghana Statistical Service.
Very good. Thank you very much. Number 2, I believe you are from civil society.
Sure.
Okay. Going right along.
My name is Daniel Amato from Ghana Center for Democratic Development.
is just a contribution, and I want to pick up from where Mr. Pimpe left, where he posed the question, what we want to do with data coming from civil society organizations and then the private sector. I want to say that I agree with him a lot on the fact that we know that most of these civil society organizations also produce data. So the question I keep on asking myself is, where do we situate that kind of information? Are we going to look at that also vis-a-vis what is coming from the public sector? And in that context, is there a need for us to look at methodologies and other things to ensure standardization, so that when we pick data from civil society organizations, we are sure of the credibility of that data? I think it's something that we need to be thinking through, because as it came out from the presentation, it's not possible that the public sector don't compete on most of the information that the SDGs require. And probably we get this kind of information from civil society organizations and the private sector, so we need to be thinking about standardization and other things. That is what I want to pick up.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The next, I think, are from the development partners. Yes.
Yes. The Vice President in his keynote.
Eric, who are you and what do you for Eric?
My name is Eric Okra. I work for UNFP. I was saying that the Vice President in his keynote address, to me, rightly alluded to the fact of lack of investment in data collection efforts. We realize that most of the surveys and major data collection efforts are donor-driven. Ghana is now a lower middle income country, and the expectation is that Ghana will show leadership and commitment in providing resources to be able to collect data to drive its development. One thing I want this body to address is to challenge government and the various agencies in terms of allocation of resources. And when it comes to allocation, what I've realized is that at times you have the budgets, what is approved is different, and what the agencies receive is also a different matter. Something might be approved, at the end they don't get anything. And if there is any place to cut, the first place is to look at areas related to data collection or things related to monitoring, evaluation, etc., etc. I would like to see a situation where, for example, we may have to decide on a dedicated percentage, which may be allocated essentially to data collection, if we believe that that is what drives our efforts. Another point, although the Vice President wasn't here, is that he talked about reaching the federalists, and he pointed out that in the government's budgets, they have certain policies, for example, inner city development, zonal development fund, etc. He talked about baselines and how to measure the impact. What I'm wondering is whether we really have baselines for these places, and whether at the end of the period we'll really be able to measure the impact of the policies that are being initiated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll go around for another round of inputs. I recognize 1, 2, and then 3. Next round, I'll come to the side of the room. Good. Number 1.
Madam Moderator, this question goes to Dr. Nimoy. My name?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm a local from Ghana Broadcast Service, in charge of official services.
All right.
Doctor, I want to find out what went wrong with this in 2020. GPRS2, now Ghana
shared group and development agenda? Is it on the same path of adoption, alignment, and adaptation? That's my question.
Very good. Right. Number 2, what's yours? Sorry, you are number 3, green. You are number 3, so number 2, right? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. As the Olu from Ghana Central says, I want to speak on the issue of creating statistics units or departments within the MLDs. My boss, Mr. JP, earlier on touched on it. The other speaker for local government service also touched on it. But the main issue now is we want to disintegrate, we want to disaggregate data from national, regional to the local level. And it's based on this objective that Ghana Statistical Service, local government service, the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and NDPC came together to work out the modalities towards that. So we came out with various documents to ensure that statistics departments are established within the work of the MMDs. The main issue is the implementation. We have to ensure that these departments are established. And as part of government decentralization program, the sort of plan to come out with a law. We want to know how far this law has gotten towards the establishment of district statistics departments. Because as we speak to the issues of utilizing administrative data, this aggregation of data, and strengthening data production at the local level. These objectives or goals can never be realized if we don't have statistics departments within the work of the MMPs. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3, please.
Kofi Kekelia from the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, formerly Town and Country Planning Department. My question is to Ghana Statistical Service and then the local government service. The issue of data, as we all know, is for planning purposes, decision making and all that. But when you look at the kind of data regime we have in Ghana, it's mostly the census data, and then people keep on making projections. But at the district level, the local government service and the statistical service, what systems do they have in place that each year they are able to monitor routine data or data that is collected by the district assemblies, the health institutions, and other agencies? What systems are in place now that's being available? Now, out of that, I think that when we actually want to improve, then we should be looking at other alternatives other than the traditional path we've been using. When you talk of data collection for me, one of the key strategies we can use is the numerous university students we have. They go on 3 months vacation, staying in the house, being at the virtual level. How can we engage these university students or technical students so that at least within every year we have a particular month schedule where we can engage them, train them so that they go out, take the data we need at the district.
Rather than having only the regional offices. For example, when you're talking of, let's say, GDP per capita, Ghana knows it at the national level. What income or GDP levels are the people gaining at the district level? Going away from the district level, the communities that form that district or MSCs, what are their income levels? So that when we are coming up with policies, you know what exactly to target. If you are saying you are fighting the poverty levels, which districts exactly, what are the income levels. These are the most critical issues we should be looking at going forward when we really want to make progress achieving the sustainable development goals. I think those are my brief comments.
Thank you. Your point is very clearly made. Michael, do you want to react to any of the issues that have been raised? I first was directed at Dr. Thompson, but there was also the indication of how do we situate local civil society generated data, the issues of credibility and rigor and coordination. Again, somebody talked about being innovative and using non-traditional approaches, including the engagement of students and all of those things to augment the capacity that there is. So would you like a response? Chief, so if you have a comment here, I'll be happy to receive your thoughts on this. Okay. Yeah. So Dr. Thompson, you want to go first before actually let's
Thank you. One of the things that I think I also have to talk about is the question or the issue that the field that one raised about the need to create a statistics department within the district assemblies, and the other issue of the statistics service withdrawing from the district assembly to concentrate at the regional level. And I think this is a major challenge, especially if we all agree that we need to localize data collection, management, and usage. Why do I say so? I think that whether we like it or not, the current government has indicated its intention to go for full devolution. If government is going for full devolution, then the issue of ownership and local planning is going to be very important. Nothing it will even change. So therefore, we need to look at the structure, the structure that we put in place, one of which will have to be the issue of data collection, management, and usage. And so I find it quite strange that the service is thinking about only concentrating at the regional level. How do we account for the need for context-specific or district-specific data that will be useful or that is required by the specific MMDA, a specific district? And so I think we need to revisit that, and I completely disagree that the service will concentrate at regional level. And that will amount to giving us only regional statistics, which will still hide the reality. And so probably the service will need to look at that. If it is the case, which I agree, the case of investment, I think that we have de-invested in the area of data management. So let's tackle that and look at the kind of human resource capacity that we have to put in place, and then make it an integral part of the decentralized system, so that it is not just about the Ghana Health Service managing, but they are part and parcel of the district assembly system, so that they are the ones that are helping the district assembly to reach out to the ones that are not rich, especially when we are talking about intra-district inequalities. And it is very important that we need to protect those realities that are happening in the district, so that in terms of allocation of resources, the district assembly is guided. As it is now, some arbitrary measures are used, depending on whether a particular assembly voted or they have people who are vociferous at the level of assembly to advocate for resources for their communities. The system is simply not scientific, and we need some scientific guidance in that regard. Maybe I should talk about the need for the records and remote monitoring. And that's the point I also made that, I mean, those of us in civil society, we will be very happy to work with the Ghana Statistical Service to see how our so-called non-scientific and non-conventional methods of gathering data are streamlined and mainstreamed into
the service phone methodology, the templates that you are working on, so that some of these work, that's what sometimes makes it so daunting for the service. We can do it because within ourselves we are looking at our own capacities. For example, we are looking at we are figuring out how we will position ourselves to even collect data beyond projects. As it is now, our data is attached to the project that we are implementing. But we are looking at the options of collecting data beyond project so that we can play a true complementary role, because we know that we do not cover all areas. But as we speak, civil society groups that have come together on this issue, we cover all the 216 districts, especially now that the Ghana's statistical service is beginning to do that. Probably we can even help you more in terms of collecting data using the templates that you may be developing. But it's something that is open for further discussion and interrogation to see which way will be more viable for us to progress.
Thank you very much, George. I'm not sure the Ghana Statistical Service was pulling out. I believe what is actually happening is being able to create departments of the district assembly that are the statistics departments of the district assembly. So I'm in line with the effort at evolution, beyond constitution. I think I suspect that is what is intended. Okay. Right. Okay. Yes, Randa, please proceed.
Well, thank you for that clarification. But that's the impression also that they're not disengaging from the district assemblies. They're simply realigning rather than run corporate offices directly from there. They now work through the regions, and the regions is trying to work with the district assemblies, so they're really working in the center. So that's my understanding. So to address some of the issues you raised in your other presentations, some of the issues raised on the forum in general, the issue of prioritization will come up only when we're going to operationalizing the SDGs. We cannot do and start prioritizing at that broad level. But at the operationalization level, which is where we then move, for instance, the next medium-term development policy frameworks. We're going to have various development priorities, and with that, we're going to have the necessary allocation of resources. So that even within education, at any point in time, you have a different set of priorities. Maybe at this point, we start with prioritizing infrastructure development, which itself is also stated in the SDGs. Once you meet that target, we then move to prioritizing raising the proportion of trained teachers in the public school system, and then move. So prioritization is more of the basic operational level than on the higher. But we have always goals that we need to pursue for a long period of time. Now, the issue of localization versus investigation, I think is very critical. This was something that was made available in the MDGs, but not too many countries took advantage of it. I know of only there's a handful of countries that investigated the MDGs in terms of one or two countries that even added to the goals. They had 9 goals, some have 10 goals. But more importantly, they then went further down and investigated them. So then there was, of course, the issue of data, and some of you have alluded to that. There's always this paradox. I noticed where because of weak local government capacity for data collection, they tend to rely on surveys and censuses. So if you go to a particular district asking for information, they're not going to give you what they've collected, but what had been collected in prior surveys and censuses. And I believe the current ongoing efforts are going to help address those things, so you can actually get the data from the ground and actually build a national database, as opposed to starting from survey and then working your way. So I'm very happy, as Dr. David said already, we will also
There's also the issue of lack of appreciation at the policy level. We make efforts because until policymakers really appreciate that data is critical to everything else we do, it will be very hard to get their support and ultimately the necessary budget allocations. So we work to some extent from our own perspective. In the past, for example, we used to send out or prepare planning guidelines that were separate from M&E guidelines. That is one reason why data collection and M&E as a whole was then bastardized and reduced to a footnote, if at all in the future. Now we have an integrated set of guidelines. So planning necessarily includes monitoring and evaluation. Your plan is not done unless there's a section there that deals with monitoring and evaluation. And the necessary costing that applies to everything else is equally applied to community. Of course, we need to work with the issue of human capacity to actually collect the data. Various solutions have been made. In the past, we have people in charge of data collection who some of them have been an accountant. But because there was no, for instance, decision there, they said, okay, you be in charge of data collection. We don't want that situation. Hopefully, once these reforms are over, we have covered that. There's a question about adoption, adaptation, and alignment with respect to issue 2020 and GPRs and so forth. They were also done, it's just that they weren't called that. So, with respect to MDGs, for example, there was an effort to go through the goals, targets, and determine which ones were relevant and which ones were not relevant in the sense that we couldn't gather the data and so forth. Except that in this particular case, we now formalized the approach, and it came out of time when we were preparing a long-term national policy. So, yes, I believe in one way or another, everyone will do that. We just not follow it. And lastly, the issue of data and data types, qualitative data, quantitative data, the quantitative for obvious reasons tend to dominate. But we should remind ourselves that qualitative data is more important. And I think that's where a lot of NGOs, and here for us we use the term civil society more broadly than just NGOs. There's a tendency to mistake NGOs for civil society organizations. Civil society is much bigger than NGOs. NGOs, research organizations, farm-based organizations, community-based organizations, they are all civil society organizations. And I'm emphasizing this because in some international forums that we attended, we have people there saying, well, NDPC did not consult civil society organizations, which of course was false. Because we are consulting even more than what they have done, because we involve market women, we have involved farmers, fishermen, they are all part of civil society, and also some NGOs. But depending on which NGO was at the particular forum, those who are not there stand at some international forum. And so the government did not consult civil society organizations. In fact, the civil society is much bigger than any NGO. So when we're talking about these things, let's be clear. Nevertheless, I have to emphasize that they have a role to play, especially where I'm not sure that the network mentioned in all the 260 districts in their capacities, but I do know that civil society organizations or NGOs do conduct studies now and then. So the issue of case studies, for example, then the qualitative dimensions of law, the qualitative aspects. I've seen studies done by the Senate Foundation, I believe, that look at, that go beyond the raw data on, let's say, child mortality or infant mortality or maternal mortality, and look at the processes that actually generate these statistics in terms of the quality of care, the systems of manner that are not always captured. So I believe that the two will be complementary. We shouldn't, by that view, then play down the central leading role of the government, because ultimately the government does have that reach. Government can pass a law that says that you should provide this information, and you must provide that information. And NGO cannot come and insist that we provide that. So that complementary relationship then must be improved. Yes, I think I've done.
Yeah, a brief comment on the integration of the statistical service offices at the district local government system. What has been done is that the offices of the federal statistical service that used to be in the districts are conforming to the decentralization process for the country. And like was mentioned earlier, the local government system is in the process of establishing the district statistical departments. And what this means is that the statistical departments in the districts will report directly to the district heads or the local government system. They are not reporting directly to the government statistical service. So to start, we have to let them take over our staff in the districts. What is being done is we are still working with them. We tend, as part of this process, to involve them in training. These are part of the discussion that are going on. We've also helped them to develop administrative structures for the statistics department and the grading system. And the plan is that after we have given them our initial staff, when they are able to secure enough budgets, we want them to recruit appropriately the right staff for the districts. But we shall still be working with them to build their capacity. It doesn't mean that statistical service has stopped collecting data from any districts. Where we have to move to the district to collect data through censuses or whatever processes we are still doing that. And the issue is the involvement. We have to involve them more so that they continue to be more responsive to data requirements. Then the issue of situating civil society related data. I believe the last speaker talked on civil society intervention is agreeing on the standards to do the data. Already some civil society organizations are partnering with the statistical service to collect information. Some are using our infrastructure, whether it is maps, whether it is GIS information, whether it's sampling with CS. They are consulting us and we are providing that to them to be able to meet certain standards for reporting. So I believe this discussion here is to help us really map out who should be what. And then what assistance or resources can be shared if there are capacities in certain areas, how we can go around to improve data collection to make us report. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I think I'm a statistician. We've been talking about another approach to the implementation of the SDGs. We could have continued, but we are being rounded off the stage. So some of the things that we'll be talking about is about collaboration, coordination, universities, MBAs, and MBAs, service providers, NGOs, and civil society working together. We'll be talking about ongoing capacity building and refinement of our methods. We'll be talking about taking advantage of technology and also about other issues about situation of this information. A couple of things that I would like to keep an eye on is the harmonization of the different data sources that exist. Right now we have citizens data from SNIT, from the National Identification, from the Electoral Commission, and even in social protection, we have now the Ghana National Household Registry for social protection targeting. How do we put all of this together? I also want some respect for local data. Sometimes when the data is from local institutions, people look at it as scams. People assume immediately that it's not rigorous, it's not reliable. How do we manage that? harnessing the low-hanging fruits, the routine data that's available that we can get and utilize. Also, we talk about quantitative data, yes, but it's not only about storytelling, but also about pointing us in the right direction. So practical, user-friendly, collaborative, participatory data collection, analysis, and dissemination. This is where I want to go with Ghana towards is. Thank you very much for your attention and cooperation, and wish all of you well. Thank you, my panelists.
Thank you very much. I will clap for them again for wonderful program. We thank you very much, Dr. Mrs. Ferraboaji, for moderating the session. I'm not to tell you that she was bullying me with her age and size. With all the power you had. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the next section, I would like to acknowledge the presence of a Member of Parliament in the person of Honorable Hussein Issa, Member of Parliament for Akure North. Shall we acknowledge his presence? I want us to also acknowledge the presence of the Executive Director of Data Protection Commission. Please, let's acknowledge you. Shall we also acknowledge the presence of the Director of Research of Bank of Ghana? Please, Bank of Ghana, representative from Bank of Ghana. Please, let's see you. I've just been hinted the CEO of SADA, Dr. Charles Akuri, has also joined us. Shall we see, acknowledge him? Please welcome. Thank you very much. The next section. In the next section, we'll be discussing the SDG data requirement, gaps, and opportunities for Ghana. And we have Professor Ina Kubrinu, a man who is described as the father of internet in Ghana. He's a scientist, and I'm told he established the computer science department of University of Ghana, University of Cape Coast. So, sir, you are welcome. To support Professor Kubrinu in moderating this section, in discussing the SDG data requirements, we shall invite Mr. Omar Seydou of the Ghana Statistical Service to join him. We shall also invite Radhika La of the UN Data Group to join in the discussion, and also Dr. Emmanuel Lamy of the Ministry of Health to join them. Please note that we are streaming live on YouTube, so as I indicated earlier, we should be smiling. We are getting comments that we are not smiling enough. And also, when you are using your mic, please speak into the mic, because some of them can hear the discussions we are having here. We are also live on Twitter, and our Twitter handle is SDG Data Ghana. So please note that and be checking as we go on. SDG Ghana. The Twitter handle, no, start with hash. Hash SDG Data Ghana. We are also on Facebook, but that's not very active. The active ones are on YouTube and the Twitter. That's what I discussed. So if Professor Kubrinu is ready, we shall hand over to him to lead the discussion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, I said thank you very much. I'm glad to have the chance to moderate this session. I'm certainly coming from a slightly different community in the sense that I'm not an economist, I'm not a statistician, but I'm a data freak. My claim today has been the first Kenyan PhD in computer science. So you hear my message is more about gradually further away from the statistics, and so some of the roles of data scientists and so on may be taken advantage of by the process. In other words, you are familiar with things like big data, crowdsourcing, all kinds of artificial intelligence related. It may not be relevant immediately now, but I think those sort of technologies and ways of looking at how we should gather and visualize and so on may be useful, more relevant to the institutional capacity. To help me proceed, we'll go around the following way. We will have one keynote presentation, and then we have two others who will also make presentations on comments. And thereafter, I immediately will come to you and try and collect some comments, and then and thereafter I will ask each of them to make comments. And if you still have time, I'll take more, and I'll keep going until they tell me to shut down. And then at that point I do. So these are all the comments I have to make. So I'd like to invite Thomas to share with us a view on SDG, efforts that we are making in terms of the data production as well as the gaps.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah, as has been said already this morning, Ghana is looking at implementing all these development agendas together as one. And so there has been some work around aligning the SDGs with Agenda 2063 and with Ghana's long-term plan. So these efforts have been ongoing, and as mentioned by Dr. Nimoy Thompson earlier, so much work has been put in there. So the data issues have to reflect these. So what we're saying that if the SDGs, Agenda 2063, and the long-term plan of Ghana and the medium-term plans will have to be achieved, we need to link the data needs of all these. And given the breadth of the SDGs, you realize that 230 indicators are still counting. Most invariably, the other agendas will not have that number of indicators. And once the perfect alignment is established, then if we're able to meet the data needs of the SDGs, invariably we'll be meeting the data needs of these other agendas. So in this process, we need to make sure we're able to address the data gaps that have been identified. All the indicators that have been established for the SDGs have been classified into three categories. Indicators that are conceptually clear, the methodology has internationally been accepted, and member countries of the United Nations regularly produce data for are classified as Tier 1 indicators. Those indicators that are conceptually clear, the methodology has been widely accepted within the international community, but not many UN member countries report regularly on them are classified as Tier 2. And the indicators that we do not at this stage have internationally agreed methodology for computing them are classified as Tier 3. So going into this exercise, there was a need to define which ones we're going to focus our attention on, especially the fact that Tier 3 indicators are still being developed. And as we speak, the 5th Interagency Expert Group meeting was held last week to look at the methodology and then the timelines for developing the Tier 3 indicators. So our focus will be on Tier 1 and Tier 2 indicators. Globally, we have these indicators. Tier 1 indicators are 83, Tier 2 indicators are 59, and Tier 3 indicators are 58.
83. And we have 5 indicators that have multiple tiers. So part of those indicators may be tier 1 and part is tier 2 or tier 3. So in all, 230 indicators. So what we have done in Ghana is to try to determine the data availability for these indicators. So we have to look at how many or what currently we have in terms of data for tier 1 and tier 2 indicators. Now, what are the data sources? Are these data coming from surveys, censuses, or administrative data? Which institutions produce these data? How timely are these data, or what is the most recent year we have data for these? And how frequently do we produce these data? And the levels of disaggregation, as we mentioned several times this morning, data disaggregation is very key here. So how are these data that we hold in disaggregated? And in the event that we do not have the data currently, what are the potential sources for this data? So this has been the exercise we've been doing in the past 1 year, determining the data availability for monitoring the SDGs in Ghana. And this is the results we have. Of the tier 1 and tier 2 indicators put together, we have I think 144. So of these indicators, currently Ghana is producing 62 of the indicators. A further 63 indicators, we have data dotted across different ministries. In some cases, we need to bring the data together to produce them. And so we say that for the tier 1 and the tier 2 indicators, data exists for these 63 indicators. In some cases, we need to do some little more work on those data, and then we put them together to compute the indicators. But for 30 of the tier 1, tier 2 indicators, currently we do not produce them, and we do not have data for their production. And this is how we realize that most of the data for monitoring the SDGs tier 1 and tier 2 will be coming from administrative data sources. 57% of these data will be from administrative data sources, with 33% from census. And this will be a combination of both census, surveys, and administrative data. If you look at all the 17 goals, you will realize that goal 1, here the emphasis is on tier 1 and tier 2 indicators. So you realize that the report you have was looking at all the tiers, all the 3 tiers together. But here we focus on the tier 1 and the tier 2 indicators. Because that is what most countries have decided to go till finalization on what constitutes the tier 3 indicators is agreed on. So you realize that most, for goal 1 down here, we don't have data for many of the indicators. Sorry, we have rather data for many of the indicators, but they are not currently produced the way the metadata of the indicators exists. If you go to goal 3, that has most of the indicators, you realize that a lot of them are already produced, and actually from administrative data sources collected by the Ghana Health Service. And then a couple of them, we have data for them, but quite a good number too, there's no data for them. And if you look at this list, most of these indicator goals here, the indicators fall under tier 3. And so they will not be featuring here because we have not considered tier 3 indicators in this assignment. Now the key challenges we have identified when leaving no one behind is data disaggregation. Gender, location, as we mentioned this morning, regions, districts, communities. Being able to disaggregate data by some social groupings will help to identify and target them better. Disability status, for instance, we've not been able to disaggregate a lot of the data by this, and so this is an area that we need to work more on. The timeliness of the data, because a survey is conducted and we get the results 2, 3, 4, 5 years after, then the result doesn't make sense anymore. A census is conducted, we do not have the data until after 6, 7 years, it doesn't make sense. So the timeliness of the data, especially survey censuses and administrative data,
is something that we have to work on. Data on new thematic areas, especially in the area of environment and climate, we don't have much data in the country on that. And so these are some of the areas that have been identified. And it's said already about multi-stakeholder data production. This is one of the key issues that have been identified that we need to work on to make sure we have data for the SDGs. CSOs and other partners have data that we need to build on for SDG. And improving the use of data for decision making. If the data is collected and is not being used for decision making, then it becomes redundant. So at the end of the day, there isn't value for the resources that are being put in. And so going forward, we want to fill in the data gaps by ensuring that we strengthen the survey and census programs that we have in the country. And we want to build effective administrative data systems. And for that reason, we have a team from Denmark who are doing very well in administrative data use. And so they are here to share their expertise with us. And again, we need to make sure we explore new sources and types of data, as has been mentioned earlier. We also need to encourage data use. And this, we think, encouraging data use, we need to make data more open. If we keep the data to our chests, then it is not useful. So data use will have to go with open data. And that way people can reuse it and we derive the benefits we need to have. And also communication of data. Data communication and visualization is very important to make them available to people. So these are some of the areas that we want to take advantage of. And ensure that data connects with decision making. So that you do not collect data that a decision maker does not need. You collect the data that will make use, that will be useful to the decision makers and meet their needs. So we need to make sure that connection exists. And also ensure interoperability of all the data and harmonize the concepts, the definitions, and all that we have. Because if Ghana Health Service has some data, Ghana Statistical Service is holding some data, and these data cannot talk to each other, then there is a problem. So interoperability is one key area to make sure that the data we have in the country are useful. And we say that we have so much data in this country, okay? Often, most of the data we have in this country, we only have statistical tables generated. Nothing more than that. And when we even try to do well, then we go to some basic analysis. So if you look at the amount of data we have here, and how much of it is being channeled, then we are not doing much. And eventually, if you go to decision, relating this to policy, not much is being done in this country. And that is one of the areas we think that we need to focus on. So that we need to open up the data, we need to get more people to use the data and derive policy issues from these data. Now, strengthening the data ecosystem generally in the country is what we have the way to go. Otherwise, the resources, everything we're doing will come to nothing. So we think that all the stakeholders in this room and those who have not been able to join us are very critical in this case. Data producers, users, funders, and the intermediaries. There are people who play several roles in the process of the value chain of data production. And we have to make sure the capacities, the processes, the policies, and the infrastructure are all aligned in the way that the ecosystem benefits strongly from it. And over the years, or in the coming years, these are some of the things we are envisaging. We need to map, understand, and interact with the actors in the system more so that we have clear responsibilities. Ghana Statistical Service needs to know its responsibilities. All data users need to know their responsibilities because that is the way we can make optimum use of the data we have. We also have to ensure that we enhance the existing capacity, and where there is the need, we build new ones. We also have to devise processes that to reach out to government agencies and beyond, so that government agencies that are producing different kind of data can easily bring this data together so that we can make use of them. And we need to evolve the policy and enabling environment for data production and use in this country. We need to also take advantage of the existing infrastructure. IT, I'm happy Prof here is an IT expert, and we all know that that is what is going to drive the development of the country going forward. So we need to make sure we build on this. And we are also working, as we try to have this ecosystem working properly, we are working to have data quality assurance framework established so that data produced from, let's say, CSOs and other people who usually would not be classified as official statistics should be able to go through this kind of assurance framework and have it classified aside and be used. And that can only be done when the methodology for collecting the data and all the issues of metadata have been clearly defined and are used. So in summary, we say that for us to be able to monitor, to have data for monitoring the SDGs, we need to make sure we're able to close the data gap. We also need to make sure the data used for decision making is strengthened. And generally, the data ecosystem must be strengthened in a way that we will be able to have to take advantage of technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your observation on open data is very much appreciated. So, open data, I would like to invite Ms. Badika, Chair of the Human Resources to make a presentation. While she's preparing, we were debating whether we do top-down or bottom-up. I opted for bottom-up, so Ghana went first.
Hello everyone. I'm going to take you a step back. We began with bottom-up. This is more of a framework presentation to tell you how we got here and to give you a little bit of a sense of the indicators so that you have an idea of why so many of them are currently not being measured and why it's important to actually start thinking about how we can measure them. I'd like to put up a slide which just gives you the text of the goals. I think the DG also did that because often we remain at the level of icons. So, for example, the second goal is not just about Wakanda, but it includes sustainable agriculture, it includes food security, and many other things. So, I think one of the things we need to do is to look beyond the icons, to look a little bit at what we are trying to progress on and how we need to measure it. Two things about the SDGs. A lot of the focus now is about the global monitoring, the global indicators. But one of the things that's different about the SDGs is that while they're global in aspiration, the idea is that they need to be nationally context sensitive. And the reporting is also bottom-up. It goes from national to global. And not all countries have to do the same thing. Not only because the goals and targets are not necessarily all applicable to everyone, but also because of the context. And there is space to do that. A little bit about how we got here. Far too many people think of the SDGs and the goals and the targets as being UN-driven. In fact, it's member state-driven. It comes out of the process of negotiation on the goals, on the targets. And then for the first time, which I think is quite amazing, there was engagement of the Statistical Commission, of national statistical offices, right through the process. And that process continues in terms of the expert groups, in terms of the UN Statistical Commission, so that again, the needs and processes of national statistical offices are in fact factored into this whole process. In terms of looking at the indicator framework, issues of disaggregation, how capacity can be built, how technology can be built, and all of those things. Omar has already touched on these different types of tiers and indicators. I want to give you a little bit in terms of the indicators and targets. And this is important that we all forget because we remain at the level of goals, and even with the SDGs, they went from 48 targets to 60. And it's the same thing that's going on in this context. In terms of the framework, we've all heard about leaving the one behind. Many of the MDG goals were at the level of harming poverty or reducing the level of mortality by 2/3. You'll see that many of the SDG goals are much more ambitious and in fact talk about universal access, universally meeting certain targets and goals. And so it's important from that point of view to be able to say who's currently being left out, who's not being measured, who needs to come. As I mentioned, it's not just about the global monitoring, but also really the national and the regional frame, which is absolutely critical. And then the importance of recognizing that there is flexibility in response to national circumstances. And the processes just reflect that are national, regional, global, and the indicators are also related to that. So countries have a lot of flexibility in determining what they count as national indicators. And some national indicators, if for a district, counting the number of tube wells is important, or boreholes is important, that can be an indicator for where to measure water quality. So it's not that everyone has to fit within the strict channels. And the review process is also driven by bottom-up. With much more emphasis really on national reporting at follow-up, then feeding into voluntary national reporting at the global level. How do we get these number of indicators? A quick thing, we know that there are 17 goals and 169 targets, and the idea is to have at least one indicator for each of those targets. So that's why you end up with 230 currently. I keep stressing the national level because I think we're not used to just figuring out how we fit at the global level. So the importance of looking at SDG goals and targets, as the DG so eloquently mentioned, in the context of national priorities, and then coming up with a localized framework of targets and indicators. And the importance of looking at it in this way is not just to look at the way everyone indicates, oh, we have too many targets, we have too many indicators. In fact, at the national level, most countries monitor a significantly larger number of targets and indicators than the SDGs. But they're often at different levels of aggregation, some very minor, some very major, all at the same level. So what the SDGs call on us to do is to be much more strategic in our choice of targets, policies, strategies, and indicators. But also not only are the SDGs much more complex, so there is absolutely no goal, which isn't like a sausage, which includes the social, the economic, and the environmental, but also they need to be looked at together. So it's hard to think about an indicator on nutrition if you're not looking at what's happening with spoon feeding, what's happening with agricultural productivity, what's happening with many of the related things. So the idea is to look at these things in a relational way, not as a separate indicator by indicator. Because there's no way of achieving them if there isn't synergy in the way that the indicators themselves and targets are looked at. The principles which outline or underpin the SDGs are universality, policy integration, and leave no one behind. There is in fact a specific target on policy coherence. It's not just a principle, these things are there for a purpose. And one should really acknowledge the role of the African regional group, because it was many of them who were saying, you cannot expect us to just meet social development goals when our economies are in crisis, when we cannot grow in the way because we need to, because of the global development architecture. So there is a lot of focus on synergies, on policy integration, and on policy coherence. And we need to take advantage of that. The targets are also very different kinds, which has implications for the kind of data that needs to be collected. Some of them are benchmarks, some of them are reaching certain thresholds, some of them are policy variables, some of them are based on the level of standards, so we can't just look at all the indicators in the same way. And it's because of all these reasons that we need to handle different types of data, different stakeholders. There are even perceptual indicators. So it's not something you can simply collect from the census, but you might get from something like the annual barometer or the national surveys and perception surveys that are produced. Just to give you an example of why there's struggle with some of the indicators for goal 1 on poverty. It's not just measuring poverty in terms of a monetary metric, the number of people below the national poverty line or the global poverty line, but it's looking at poverty in all its different forms, in terms of political, social, and economic inclusion, in terms of rights, access to services, reducing exposure to vulnerability, social protection. So these are a whole range of new things which are contributing to poverty. I think for too long, many of our countries complain that simply measuring ourselves in terms of how many people are below $1 a day or $1.25 is simply not enough. There's also an incredible focus on norms and rights that will call right through, which gives you a flavor of the type of data that needs to be met. Are people's rights being met? Are we ensuring that all men and women, for example, have rights to economic resources, basic services? Looking at donors, it's not enough just at the level of enrollment. Is there quality education? Are people finding jobs? Is everyone entitled to those things? This was just, I'm not going to go through it, but just to give you a flavor of the types of issues and the number of targets which actually talk about universal access, whether it's to safe and affordable drinking water, or to modern energy services, or to health services. And I think quite importantly, because we almost never get to the discussion around the actual targets and indicators, it's important to recognize that there are some that are fundamental to the purpose of the workshop we're having today. In fact, there's a target on ensuring public access to information, protecting fundamental freedoms, in accordance with national legislation and international agreements, ensuring equal opportunity in regard to legislation, policies, and rules, and even one by 2020 of ensuring the availability of high quality, timely, and reliable data disaggregated by income, gender, age, race, ethnicity, migration status, disability, etc. And one on looking at providing legal identity for all. The Vice President today spoke about the whole importance of the national ID. This is in fact a target. The civil registry and vital statistics is also reflected here. So by doing what Ghana is doing in terms of priorities in these things, it's in fact meeting some of the SDG targets. We just never got that far to realize a lot of the work we're already doing in fact is within the framework. Financing. For too long issue, financing has been linked to how much money do we need to actually achieve this or that goal or target. But in fact, the whole discussion of financing in the SDG context is much broader. It looks at access to financial services, it looks at the legal and regulatory environment of global financial markets, not just national ones. It looks at official development assistance, it looks at the transaction costs of migrant remittances, it looks at illicit financial flows. Often our countries have the finances, but they're not available to national policymakers to use. That's a policy question. It's also an SDG target. As well as reducing corruption and bribery, looking at domestic resource mobilization, official development commitments, and also long-term and sustainability. Too many countries have suffered because of the issues around debt not being sustainable and not being productively utilized. I think the DG also mentioned Agenda 2063. And another thing that should be said in favor of the Africa group is that they were the only region to go with a common position, already thinking about what they were going to do in terms of Agenda 2063 and how some of those goals and priorities needed to be reflected in the SDGs. That said, there is in fact a gap. So there is no association for close to 30% of the targets. But there is a lot of work in terms of looking at minimum set of indicators and targets that need to be monitored at the regional level and how they can be an integrated framework for actually monitoring these different agendas. The last point I wanted to make is not on the slide, but I think it's not only engaging different actors, but finding new ways of doing things. For example, we know that many of the districts are not connected to the fiber. And we can only talk a lot more about simply the backbone infrastructure. In countries including the UK, local communities have broadband cooperatives and basically put in the sort and labor to connect fiber. Other countries put in sharing of infrastructure so that we have one common mast which is maintained by the community which has all the requirements for different mobile companies to connect. School students have been used to actually collect, work and map all kinds of data and collect statistics. So there's a range of ways we could actually do schools if we adopted a more problem-solving attitude to actually getting that. So I think part of what we're all encouraging all of us to do is to think creatively. There are dictionaries that would simply never have come up to small countries if it was simply left to somebody or Microsoft to say, okay, we need to produce something in Chinese. But through workshops, through hackathons, people were actually able to come together and generate the information needed to make that real. So I think that's what we all need to do, is to roll up our sleeves and also think about this. The importance of data communities. How many of us have suffered from Excel errors, including for the stock market, the major errors because somebody put in the wrong number? Amazon's thing collapsed because of the wrong computer. The importance of data communities is being able to pick up on that, on those mistakes, on those issues. And that's really the whole philosophy of the open source, the open data movement. It's not only making data open, it's being able to interrogate it, to see the linkages, to see where we go wrong. So I think that's another call to say, we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate the flexibility in the process so that we could also adapt and perhaps benefit more locally as we contribute to the reports. Thank you very much. I think the next presentation is going to be more local in the sense that it's from Ministry of Health. And so I invite Dr. Emmanuel to share a few words. That's because not to start with also. So, Excellencies, Chairman, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and Ghanaian parliaments all over the course of the It is a great honor to be here today to discuss this topic. And I understand the Minister of Health. And looking at the topic, early data requirements, council opportunities. After the particular session is the data requirement for our LDBs. In the English language, there's a common phrase or language that takes most less. And it's article readings to test whether the level is acidic or basic. I come to understand it as a early warning, clearly show whether a given issue is going in the wrong direction or the right direction. And here what I want to know is that data, availability and quality of data, tests whether a given situation is going in the wrong direction or the right direction. So this topic is apt and is key as such at a time as this, especially when we are at an age, and I'm sure Pedro can correct me rightly, we are in a revolution where we spend the Internet of Things. And this revolution is basically how we use the power of data, how we use the power of the internet and the world around. 4 basic questions. How well do we live? How well are resources well distributed? How efficiently are we using those resources? Last but not the least, what are we doing for prosperity? So if I take them one by one, how well are we living as a people? Coming from the health sector, most important, how are we tracking our life expectancy? How are we tracking our life mortality rate? Our infant mortality rate? and very closely that as part of our social contract with constitution, the right to transport policy, clearly the right to good healthcare, the right to education, and this is what is supported on the presidency every year as part of the state of national affairs. The only reason the presidency can drive this thing is when we have abilities and quality of data to report on this progress. In the next question, how efficiently, how well are resources distributed? Basic questions here will mostly be levels of inequality, income distribution, and these are broad issues that borders on each of us. And we can also really answer these questions if you have real-time data to appreciate these things. I always say we do sometimes that know who is poor, who is rich. I think if people don't stay poor forever, and people don't stay rich forever, how are we able to monitor the business in real time and be able to see whether he faces to poverty, through calculations, and back again to poverty? And these are things that we have to level from market. So it's that we should understand. The other question is how efficiently are we also using these resources? So three questions about labor activity. How are we testing our labor activity? I know there's been a lot of work and use of employment. We have systems to measure the labor activity in real time. And we will see whether people are at work are as productive as we think, and that was one destination to go. Then, like I said, last but not the least, what are we doing for posterity? What are we doing for the next 3 generations to come and inherit? And in this way, how are we greenhouse gases pollution? I'm sure it's about that and say, which might be across the country. So we beyond the fact that we are saying that and say, how was really the best of our effectiveness to the affect of education? And are we going to do a Ghana for the next 3-4 generations? So for others, like the question that I think is key when it comes back to the topic about our data requirements for our SDGs and as we as a country want to inherit. Then the next fundamental question, let me just move from the Millennium Development Goals into the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a major policy shift. For me, one of the fundamental lessons of the Millennium Development Goals was that macro level progress and sometimes mask a lot of things underneath. And we need to really move into a level of market. And that's why I feel compare with what Mr. Obama said. We need disaggregated data by age, by sex, wealth distribution, and all other level of marketing that will help us as a country. Not forgetting that there are also levels of inequality exist within. And in this way, we need also go even beyond the disaggregated data and move to the level of expected prioritization. This is key. We need to also the prioritization of some of this progressive reduction of inequalities over time. And this is one way we can really help to move some of these things forward. The next question I just now rightly stated was that we need new and other types of data policy. And I want to say that these new and other types should fit into the revolution we find ourselves in, the Internet of Things. Innovation should be used to fuel the data revolution. And this innovation should be content-driven. This innovation should be backed by people-led initiatives that should adapt to our context. And that is key. And nobody else can do this better for us than the people themselves at various points and different places within the country. So I want to add here that beyond the household service like stated, we also need real-time monitoring systems. And I'm saying real-time monitoring systems, but from what I see to health, we have outbreaks of epidemics. It's Ebola here, the other emergencies, the real-time monitoring systems, and capture the data for us, the real-time and receive. We need a lot of people-led feedback initiatives. This is very important, especially in this revolution. To get feedback from the public. We also need accession data. It's also important. It also needs to be part of our public. And also big data analytics that comes into the frame to see how we put all these things together. So it goes back to the existing data collection mechanisms. I know it's sufficient. I really want to unpack and see what best we can have. We talk about household data collection, we collect household data. And we have people in this country who live in cemeteries. How we capture the data. That's one of our monitoring systems. We go to cemetery, right? But there are huge families living in outdoor cemeteries. Cemeteries scattered all over the country. Who is capturing the data? And how we ask right now, is everything in the household and that kind of classification. So we really also really understand our society People live in the marketplaces, people live in kiosks, people sleep in front of kiosks, some sleep inside. These are the realities that we have to avoid. And also having at the back of our mind that urban migration and increase in cities is going to be the next big thing that is going to move this world. So really that reality is going to help us which are alive to these other forms of data collection. To see how best we are going to by to now to outside of our business and other forms of data collection. So really these are things that we should also be alive to as we move forward. And I just want to go back to the point that we really need inclusive people-led participatory monitoring to implement our traditional data collection. This is key because these people are the grassroots data collection efforts. And their voice should also be heard in this dynamics of our data collection. To me, this will add new voices and new ideas to our own forms of data collection. And this will give us real feedback from the bottom. Most importantly, people of government need to collaborate and need to be united in this search for data collection. And that's the only way we can also promote social inclusion. So that people know that they are part and parcel of the data revolution and want to find ourselves. I know this is a kind of things these are the top order, but I want to end with what Nelson Mandela once said. It's always impossible until it is done. So let's make it possibilities and possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some new things here. Real-time data, internet of things to capture, and so on. Migration issues, and that will lead to smart cities as well. Anyway, I think it's now your chair. I'd like to take some questions or comments, and then we'll have response from the panel. Any comments or questions? Yes, to my right here, at the back there. I've got two. Okay, please start.
Hi, my name is David Boku. I'm with Open Knowledge International. I think there is a consensus that for Ghana to be able to meet the SDG goals, certainly there has to be innovation. But from the conversations, there seems to be this top to bottom approach that we want to take. And when I say that, I mean it seems to be driven by either statistics service or civil society. But I think we're also ignoring another mass opportunity such as our educational system. We have tons of Ghanaians, millions going through our education system, through primary school, through secondary school, through university. How are we thinking about innovating around that by leveraging or exposing students to all these trends that we're talking about? Because when we grow the problems that we are going to face to students, that is where innovation happens. When students are being exposed to the challenges of data collection, to data analysis, to data visualization, or whatever we're talking about, then they can think about the innovation that's needs to come up with to solve the problem. So my fundamental question relates to statistics service or anyone who is tackling this problem. To what extent are we incorporating building courses for students in around basic data literacy? So that when they come out, so whether they want to be a data journalist or they want to go to law or they want to go for a statistics service, they have that fundamental understanding in order to make this sustainable. Thank you.
Very much. At the back.
Okay, I think my point is it's just to help with the issue of my name. Okay, I'm Kofi Kekelgamojo from Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, formerly the Town Council Planning Department. I think one issue which is coming up strongly that Omar mentioned is the issue of spatial data. That is getting to know the exact location of whatever form of information. Okay, let me stop. Yeah, as I was saying, one of the major issues that is coming out strongly, particularly for planners and for almost everyone, is the issue of spatial data. I think that in as much as we talk about all these things, one major innovative way that we can start with is taking GPS location of major infrastructure or whatever form of data we are collecting. Let me use the example of, let's say, um, the number of schools we have in Ghana. When you go to the district assembly level, you realize that even the district assemblies themselves do not know the exact physical location of the schools we have. So you see that government will be coming out with more schools to be constructed. In the end, you realize that there is quite a huge concentration of the number of facilities within the same area that is already having these facilities. In the end, in terms of impact or value addition, regarding all of them, you realize that you not actually make any impact in terms of the kind of development you want to achieve. The second example I want to use is that of Ghana Health Service. They are doing very well with that, and I think they started mapping out most of the district's facilities with MMDs. But again, I would like to advise that even with that, there should be some form of serious quality data monitoring. Because we plot some of these locations and we realize that they are in the sea. Which is something I believe they are working on. You take the location of the GPS, you plot them, and they are in the sea. Let me move on to use an example of Ghana's Scientific Council. I think they recently did a very good work regarding the industrial business stuff in the IPS, for instance. And talking about industrialization process, when they are able to take the GPS location of all these, how we call it, the establishments, that they conducted the survey on, then if you take the map of Ghana, or let's say that of Greater Accra, you know the better spatial distribution of the facilities. For example, where the medium or large industries are. So that in terms of planning, you know exactly where to channel your energy demand along with it. So I would like to add that whatever form of information we are gathering, we should try as much as possible to add the spatial content. And most of us use smartphones. And with your smartphones, you can really take this GPS location, which can be mapped with the entire system we have now. So I'll say that that is a key issue that we should focus on. So I'll be able to achieve whatever goals we want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're getting towards the end, so I want to take the last question, very last question, last call. If there's no question, then we will conclude with concluding remarks. Okay, so I don't see any urgent comment or question, so I'll ask
Okay. Just to respond, I think, to the two questions that were raised. In my own life, I think of a phase before the internet and after the internet. Because once you have the internet, we were the generation which had the funky browsers and FTP and everything happened, people didn't know that. But it transformed what you could do. There are now open courses online. There's absolutely everything that you can find online. So you're absolutely right. You know, the education system is not set up to get people to think. But the point is the possibilities exist. I had a conversation with one of the professors in our mining school here recently. And within half an hour, I did all kinds of things with him sitting in a meeting. And he just said, I wish my students do it, but they spend more time on social media. So the important thing is not that we can't do it, it's encouraging people to use their phones, to use their resources, to actually think outside the box and to think in a problem solving way. I gave the example of where students' groups have been used to do data bootcamps to go out and actually map their data. And now it's much easier. Actually, the University of Ghana, they also have an application which was used in the north to do some training with local people in districts to do rapid collection of facilities data over GIS. So these things are being done and they can be done. It just takes the will to actually think of how it can be done. It was Ghanaian and Tiny David who came up with Suko. How many people know about Suko? which in fact you said good, which you said the GIS coordinates. And he said the reason he did it was because there were no street names. It was hard to give people locations. So with the tool, we would actually find that. It was also critical, especially for emergencies. So there's already a lot of innovation going on. It's just not taking the scale, it's not adapting. GSS is now required to speak more about already doing that, many of the surveys for the confidentiality issues, but also collecting GIS information. We can also involve the informal sector in this, because to be honest, most of the time they're simply not even on the land. And there are huge numbers of examples from Kenya, the largest slum in Kenya, from the largest slum in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, in Bangladesh, and others that could go on. But local people were involved in individual training to actually put all their facilities to themselves on the land. So there are a whole range of ways that can be done, engaging all kinds of stakeholders in these kinds of things, because it's not simple to do. Too much of the time we think about data as something that involves the computer and all the rest of it. Yes, that's how it's happens for data collection, which is speed things up. But a lot of things are possible simply with a phone. And if I know that CEO Sara was here, we keep talking about how quickly and rapidly they did mapping not only the facilities, the resources, all kinds of things in space in a very short period of time. So basically, it's happening all over the world, it's happening in Ghana, it's just not happening in a coordinated way and on the scale.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the comments for Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to have a very good question. I'm very established in the This is what give me the knowledge. I just that I guess this. And now it's and also the key role in also the and we really go for that. I will start it. We have our two meters of it's still hard to find for the data. I always say we should not stop us from improving our because we don't have this service. This service is really expensive. And I know that we can't do that issues. We can't continue with this service. We really need to find a way to fix that issue data and fix it in a way that we can trust it. We can do that and move forward. The part of the question that this is the young man has, how do we ensure that we have citizens who are fit for purpose for the Internet of Things generation? I think that was very important question because we had an agricultural revolution where we have to follow our father's farm to learn farming. And the new revolution I think has made a lot of things. How do we position our education system? How do we position our curriculums to reflect the two? Or remind the risk of being there? And I think this is a well response. I can say I've checked the reason most of them are 500 and maybe what we call it, the need to also even control the regulatory issue. I know the government has not really that. These are big companies that have not really like how to perform that. So I think it's not our way to meet with issues here, but it's not really how to look at it. And with our MDs, our ICT directors, our MDs, really between our level capacity to understanding this whole new world from both sides, blockchain, hardware, software, to make sure we're able to come to us on this thing. That's what I'll say. It's a real time to come up with the country. We understand it. Thank you very much. Umar, share your last comments.
Thank you very much. The previous speakers especially in the area of spatial data. I think it's very critical in balancing that with confidentiality. And so for that reason, yes, apparently, even added all of that. We're going to broadcast information, and the plan is to use outlets for data collection. So once we have that facility, we should be able to take it have that kind of investigation. Because most likely by 2020, when we go to the population planning census, we are more than capacity and the know-how to continue to use these partners for the data collection and managing what data we will have at the time. I think I agree with you that we haven't done much with our statistical data, especially at the level where we encourage people at that early stage so much interested in statistics. But it would be interesting to know, as part of our planning for 2017, we looked at how we communicate the results of some of these census to be appealing to people at a level, so that they would be interested in going further and getting much involved in this. So I think that is one thing. And also we need to make sure the coordination with administrative data, the collection and coordination, in terms of making sure we use the same standards. Because it's very important that the data is there, but you need to know how the data was collected and whether it really reflects the situation before you can use it. And so that is one of the reasons why we are pushing to have the data quality assurance framework established, where all data producers voluntarily subscribe to it, so that at the end of the day, if you produce data, you need to know that these are the benchmark of data, users of this data are going to judge the data. And so we make sure that wherever we go, we follow this and able to produce the kind of data that we need, that kind of standard. That way we believe that the level of data we have in the system will be very useful. The last thing I want to say is, over the years, we have not really encouraged people to come up with publications based on data that has been collected within the country. So maybe that will be one of the things we should be doing now, encouraging students, in particular in tertiary institutions. And we need to have a forum for these findings to be published, because people have invested their time and resources to do this, and they're trying to make in the libraries of the universities without makes sense. So these are some of the things that we need to work on going forward. And the consequence is that because we place much emphasis on ICT and the administrative data, we have two side effects. One on ICT, which is bringing the heads of IT from the various entities together to think through how they can make use of ICT to how the work is doing. Secondly, the administrative data side events also looking at how can we learn from, for instance, the experiences of Denmark, who are using administrative data to do fantastic things. Okay, because we have so many data collected, we don't use it. So if we don't use it, then that doesn't make sense.
I think you've heard, you come to the end, and I like to thank you for your indulgence, your attention, and contribution from. I have a few takeaways. Tablets and phones are as much computers as the servers and the high performance machines. So that whole image can do whatever you want. I also enjoy the flexibility of the process that allows us to find new ways and meet the disability and found ways to capture I think through informatics is necessary these days, especially because of responses raised. We must be able to have our response, and so we should take it into consideration. There is mention of internet of things, and of course, the phone itself is one of those things. It's also one of those things, internet of things. And so you can use whichever one you have that is secure that you can achieve but the future is more involved. It's becoming wearables, it's becoming things that you don't think are collecting
some of them delivered, standards must be common and the education system should be a bit athletic because if we can't do it now, tomorrow the output will help us achieve that. And I'd like to go some on the following on what to do because I am particularly working doing all the data that I can continue information. So we should pay attention to this part of this job and actually the job with business. I'd like to thank you very much.
Shall we do that again for them, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much, Professor Dean Abukwelu, for moderating the session for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we end our lunch. And so we're going for lunch at the Banco Hall. Don't look at what is written on your coupon. Just ask for directions to Banco Hall. But before we do that, we shall be having oral sessions tomorrow. 4 oral sessions tomorrow. And so we want participants to register against the session that they will be attending. There will be sessions on strengthening administrative data. There will be sessions on production of environmental and spatial data. There will be session on tools and infrastructure for data communication, and another on disaggregation of data. So please, when you step out at the registration desk, indicate the session you'll be attending tomorrow. When we return from lunch, we have 3 sessions. We have planned a cocktail after the final session, and so don't be there. Let's wait and after doing a cocktail, we interact very well. So I wish you all bon appetit and enjoy your meal. So we'll return in an hour's time. Thank you very much to each and everyone.
For the guy.
We observe
They also were complaining about yeah, we are not very
Okay. Yeah. It's probably because people don't really have to understand more when I started doing this. Right now, I treat my current job that allows me to do special training. That's what I'm like here around there. I just
Chief. Where we coming? Okay, possible. I don't come to this meeting. Okay. That will come to the all the feeling like picture. Okay. I okay with the camera. I'm giving you the motor laptop. You have the, you want to use one computer. No, I want to use the stream. Yes, like, you know what we have, we can't just one without Zoom. But you have the accessory, like the cable. No, I didn't bring it. Oh. So this is then I've removed the camera. The small leg. But we have one. We need to talk to the we need to choose one. The slide right now. You have the one from Monday. Managing that for just of this guy, what is the name? The Central Region, the area. Okay. But it's left. But you have to no, that's what you can talk. Charlie, you know where to so I can see. Yes. I can. This thing is still streaming. They're putting a this thing on it. But okay, I can't. So put the cable. Let it connect with the cable. Get it. Hey, but what's wrong with your this thing? Why? Did you use Super Glue? I don't know. Let me remove it. Machine, put it in your bag. Okay. So we disconnect this one. So when we come back from lunch. All right, let me connect it right. They wanted they want the streaming. Why then, are they not getting it? I don't know. They sent me a text that they are not getting it. They are not able to stream or they are not getting it. So we can send them the link. They should have the link. They didn't capture me when I was sleeping. They were using the wrong everything is fine. Everything is fine. The recording will be there. Yes. So anytime you can replay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's some of the voice sometimes. Yeah, even from the mic, some of them. They alerted us. That's it. Yes, that's it.